Excited to have this conversation. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep your computers on mute. Save questions for the end of the presentations. Use the Q&A icon for questions and the chat icon for technical assistance. And this webinar will be recorded and posted to our website. So I'd like to start off by thanking our content partners, Goodwill Industries of Southeast Wisconsin and Milwaukee Center for Independence. They are both valued members of Disability in Wisconsin that focus on development of talent pipelines and the successful execution of hires. I'd also like to thank each of our speakers for their participation on today's call and for their leadership in considering all avenues in attracting the right talent. Tom Doherty, CEO, Stratus Industries; Colton Grebe, VP, Head of Research and Development at Grebe's Bakery; and Jeff Curlin, President and CEO, Tailored Label Products. The Disability In is the state's only business-to-business association that promotes disability inclusion in the workplace, marketplace, and supply chain. We help change cultures through education, resources, and best practices to environments more conducive to employing people with disabilities, then help align our members with the talent and resources to execute. In 2020, we have programming and content focused on mental health, supplier diversity, accommodations, and best practices in hiring individuals with autism. It has been found that people with disabilities have equal or higher performance rates compared to those without disabilities, are less likely to resign and move on to another job, and have the lowest attrition rates of any employee group. Additionally, businesses that focus on disability inclusion are statistically more profitable than those that do not, and nearly 700,000 adults in Wisconsin have a disability. This morning's discussion is centered around the unique experiences of each of these business leaders in employing individuals with disabilities. I hope that everyone can take away new insights that can be put to work in each of the respective organizations. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker, Tom Doherty, CEO, Stratus Industries. Tom, could you start off by sharing how long you've actively employed individuals with disabilities and what was the catalyst in doing so?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, Derek. Morning, everyone. As far as starting with when we started to employ people, it's a little over 5 years ago. We started doing it actively as a way we were looking for hiring new people. How it kind of got ingrained or brought into our fold as a mainstream piece was through a group called City Partners. We'd met them as far as an HR firm and helping us with some other activities. And they were well involved with the state for some of the TWE and DVR programs and other things that kind of opened our eyes to what was out there as far as assistance for helping with training and other things that we had no idea that was out in the world. And currently we're still working with City Partners and MCFI in helping us find new hires and things in the disabilities realm.
So did you? Was there any thoughts on not hiring individuals with disabilities? Was it just part of your overall strategy? And what roles do these individuals play within your organization?
So it's a pretty, as far as what roles, we have a unique company and a lot of diversity in what we do as far as customers and projects and output and all that kind of stuff. Is a pretty unique thing that we're working in so many different fields. And people with disabilities, I mean, we've had everything from people running CNC equipment and managing teams to assembly, fulfillment, cleaning, packaging. There's really no realm we haven't explored with people that have disabilities for one thing or another. As far as being open to it, throughout my entire life, I'd worked with people with disabilities as a younger kid in camps and other things. So it was there wasn't any like fear for us as far as like doing it. I'd seen abilities and known plenty of people throughout my life. So it was just another avenue for more people for us.
So you were really just exposed to it and more comfortable with the skills and talents of these individuals.
Yeah, very much so.
So what did the recruitment process look like and the collaboration with, was it
City Partners? Yeah.
City Partners.
So yeah, originally, I guess when it started off with a few early on hires that were helping us when we got involved in some more kitting processes. And it was from an interview standpoint, I mean, no different than anything else we were doing, just meeting people. For us in an interview process, our biggest thing is keeping our corporate culture together. So it's an attitude issue. So we're looking much more for the right attitude as we are for what their abilities are, I would say. So it's just finding people that, fit well, have a positive attitude, are looking forward to showing up to work, and will work well with everyone else that we have on the team. Um,
How many people are on your team?
I, it's a great question. I think we're right about 30 employees right now.
Okay. What was the initial response of the team when you made that first hire?
I think there were a few individuals that had some reservations about it, but overall, we have a really close family knit, family atmosphere. So I think everyone was, if we thought it was a good idea, they were on board. We have a lot of really caring people that work for us, so it was a very inclusive environment right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Were there any accommodations that you needed to make?
Yeah, so we try to be a really flexible office space in general.
Mm-hmm.
We offer flexible hours. We are located on some bus routes and other things to make it easier for people who have to take transportation to get to us. We've done custom, workspace things to customize things as far as different height desks, specialty tooling, and specialty devices and different things to help people make their jobs easier. But I feel like we do that across the board for everyone, regardless of a disability. So it's kind of, we want people to succeed in what they're working on. So we'll do whatever we have to do to make their job easier for them.
As far as pulling together this special equipment, and was there a partner or collaboration as you went through that process?
I guess there's been some MCFI has been open to us to show us kind of some of the things they've done in the past and other things. We've also worked with Beyond Vision, a company that employs mostly blind people, and kind of they've helped us brainstorm if we needed something a little more out of the box. But otherwise, a lot of it's really simplistic, like changing the height of a desk or making something where it's easier to count or something making widgets that are helping to make things simpler. It's in general good process improvement anyway. So a lot of the things aren't that complicated out of the box. So a lot of things can be handled relatively simply.
And getting a little more specific on some of the types of disabilities that have been integrated into your workforce, and maybe some specific cases on accommodations or certain challenges you've worked through.
Yeah, I guess specific accommodations that when in the kitting process and different things, we'll make a lot of jigs. So it's a matter of, filling the jig perfectly before it gets dumped into a bag or that kind of thing, so that there's, it's easier to make sure everything's perfect. It's easier to physically count. Special, devices to help grab larger objects or do different things. For some people that are wheelchair bound and other things like that, just modifying workstations, heights and different things, moving some stuff around the office to make it more accessible from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of short run and one of a kind production runs and different things. So we end up with some processes that are literally very specific to a unique job, and we may only do it once and never do it again.
Yeah.
But it's not, I would say, from a standpoint of, picking out specific ones, there's a lot of jigging and height adjustments. So those are probably the two that jump out at me as the most common things we do.
Yeah. Is it both people with cognitive and intellectual disabilities and physical?
Yeah, both. Yeah, I guess from what we've worked with as far as disabilities, it's a pretty broad spectrum. We've had severe physical and mental disabilities, and I guess with our attitude, when we're looking for people on the attitude side of things, it's very we think there's a good job for everyone. Everyone is good at something. So it's a matter of find someone who's good, figure out what they're good at, and then kind of put them in the right seat on the bus so that they can help our organization move along further. So we're very flexible we rarely hire someone for a specific task or job. We much more hire someone as a person and then figure out what they can do to be an asset to us.
Yeah, absolutely. how is, ongoing coaching and accountability managed? Similar to your neurotypical employees, or?
I'd say it's similar to our normal employees. I would say that we've found that um, from a loyalty standpoint and a organizational standpoint, or like a task oriented standpoint, generally I find that people who we've hired with a disability, once they know what they're supposed to be doing and what the expectations are, we have very little follow up that's needed. They're very kind of across the board. Everyone that we employ, we kind of empower to have. We very rarely micromanage, I guess is the way to look at it. We kind of empower people to do the right thing, and once they know how to do it, we don't oversee them very much at all. And kind of if someone's unable to kind of handle things without a lot of oversight, they're not a good fit for us. So we kind of work to help people with the job and help find the job that works for them that they can do without a lot of oversight. So we have very little like management on a micro level.
Mhm. I expect it varies from employee to employee, but what would you say is that run up where they get to that point where they're self-sufficient?
Yeah, we'll do a lot of like working hand in hand with people, and I guess because it's unusual that we'll have a job kind of day every day for months on end. It won't be that someone's working in a vacuum from a standpoint. There'll be, it might be a day or two, or a matter of 3 or 4 days, kind of get someone ramped up on a project, and figuring out what they need to be successful with it, and then they might be able to do it for 3 or 4 weeks straight without an issue, and then we've moved on to the next task, or that thing comes back 4 months from then, and it's maybe another couple half an hour to get someone ramped back up and set up. But it's pretty smooth, and we've had and from abilities, we've had a pretty broad spectrum of what people's abilities have been, and we've still always been able to kind of find a way to make them successful, by not that much of extra work. So.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. When I search for talent, it's traits, positive attitude being the first one. Um, how would you say that, did this have an impact on your culture after that first hire? I mean, and speaking to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a definite positive impact on the culture once I as far as once it's going. It helps make a much more family atmosphere where people are looking out for each other. People are much more willing to lend a hand to anyone who's working, regardless of who they are or what they're working on. Kind of a jump in, walk by. If someone's struggling, they're going to lend a hand and stop and reach in. So overall, it just makes for a much friendlier and more inviting environment for people to work in. I think it also, I guess we hire people kind of, because it's such an attitude-based thing, we'll bring people on without a plan of what they're going to do when we meet the right person. And our staff and team is used to us showing up with someone new and saying, hey, this is so-and-so, and they're starting tomorrow. What do we need help working on? And so that's kind of helped grow our culture of the fact that people are willing to jump in on any project and figure out how we can get more hands working on things.
So essentially, it's kind of enhanced the team culture and developed more empathy with fellow employees.
Yeah, very much so.
Has it transferred to the bottom line?
I think so. Yeah, we have. We're growing at a great rate. We have a lot of really cool things. We're buying buildings, expanding, and things are going wonderfully. So from a bottom line standpoint, I guess we look at it as everyone. Everyone's an employee, and everyone's there to help us grow and keep progressing. And if we didn't think that it was successful, we wouldn't be doing it. And so it's a continued way for us to grow, and it's a great. I guess we look at it as it's a great talent pool that we get to meet people who are, I guess, otherwise not often looked at. So sometimes even their disabilities are quite minor, and from an introduction, you might not even realize anything. So for us, it's helped us have a much broader reach of what our talent pool can be. So it's made hiring people a lot easier.
Have you had hires that didn't work out? And if so, what would you do differently?
I think early on we were less critical on we were much more, we needed hands to do something. So we'd hire people kind of instantaneously, regardless of attitude and different things. So us growing as a company and being more strict about our gut feels on how people interacted initially with us and how people's attitudes were with the team. Our biggest, our least successful employees across the board, disabilities are not, have been people that haven't been able to get along or work together well.
Yeah.
So I think that's been our biggest change in growth, is being much more strict on how people are working together, from that standpoint.
Did you have to have coaching conversations with any of the team members that maybe didn't necessarily embrace that new shift in talent?
We the few people that were harder, yeah, that didn't adjust to it very well, I would say for the most part have either, yeah, we've had conversations with initially, and if they weren't willing to change or adjust kind of their attitudes, wouldn't end up staying with us, either by their choices or ours. It's kind of the nicest part about like our culture being great is that a lot of it's self-policing. So people that aren't happy working for us end up, realizing that they're not a good fit, and most of the time choose to exit on their own because they understand that they're not part of the team.
Mm-hmm. What's going through this process? What would are there tips, like if you have a business owner that's considering their first hire? What would be the things that you've learned that you would try to help them get in front of?
I guess the big thing is being open-minded and understanding that, like the category of people with disabilities is so broad, that at some level, everyone, regardless of being classified as disabilities or not, has something they're not good at or great at. So that everyone has something that they are good or great at. So basically, anyone has the opportunity to be an asset to a company. And the biggest thing I think is taking the time to get to know an employee or a prospective employee, so that you can find out what they can be good at and how you can utilize their skills to be an asset to you. But just being open-minded about the fact that pretty much everyone out there has something to offer, and that they can be a useful member of their team.
Were there things that you did through the interview process that helped better assess what they're good at?
I guess we're try to be very open door policy on things. So it's, what do you like working on? What are things that you're a fan of, both inside of work and outside of work? And we have a very informal interview process, both my business partner, Lyle, and myself. We're really, it's a conversation, and it's I would say fluid conversation, from the fact that, we're going to start you on this. And if you hate doing it and you want to work on something else, like come see us, come talk to us. We don't want someone showing up every day and, whether, sanding wood when they hate doing it, or putting something, whatever it is, you should have some enjoyment in what you're doing. So we try to have an active conversation. As far as starting, we'll try to throw people on a lot of different projects early on, so they can have a better broad spectrum of what things they really enjoy, what things they don't like. And then we can try to work harder to keep them on things that they like doing.
Mm-hmm. Great. So do you have any final closing comments before I transition to Colton?
I guess my biggest things are, it's not that much work to bring on people with disabilities. It's often, it's far less work than I think most people assume. And then the other thing is that they add to your culture, and most of our employees that we've brought on with disabilities end up being great employees. They always show up on time. They care about what they're doing. They do a great job. So they end up being like true assets to the company.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Tom, for your insights. A really good discussion. And now I'll transition to Colton Grebe, VP, Head of Research and Development at Grebe's Bakery.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So I'd say kick it off in similar fashion. How long have you been on this journey, and kind of what was the catalyst in starting it? And I think you guys are much farther along than most organizations. I think it's been culturally embedded in what you guys do for some time.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I think that, well, the biggest thing I can offer for other people, and I have been standing on top of mountaintops screaming this to other business owners, they need to get started, and that's what I can offer to other business owners because we're pretty new in this process. We started in about 2018, and it came out of an absolute necessity from a labor standpoint. So it for me, it was very much an emotional decision, but then starting to see how it makes sense from a business was really what brought this, to where it's at today. So currently we employ about 8 individuals through DVR and TWE. But I'm going to go through just some kind of points here, Derek. You can feel free to stop me at any time. But if I can hammer anything, any point, and you can tell I'm very passionate about what we do here, it's you have to look at your hiring and your labor from a systems approach. And actually working with people with disabilities really helped me understand this process to take it to all of our employees. So there's something that has been ingrained in me, and I love telling people this. The success of an individual is dependent on the organizations involved. I'll say it one more time just to really hammer that point. The success of an individual is dependent on the organizations involved. It's no different from a sports analogy. I'm a Packer fan, go Packers. But when the Cowboys and the Eagles, when they got their dream team together and had all the superstars in the world, and then everyone was all surprised when they failed, to me, I looked at it, it's really simple. It's a systems approach. So if you attack this in the beginning as a systems approach, you're going to be much better off. And basically, one of the biggest things that I've learned is the success. You have to build trust with whatever organization you're working with. And that is probably the most key factor. So we work with MCFI, we work with city partners, we work with VA, we work with Goodwill. And if I don't feel like I have a good level of trust with them, I don't feel it's going to be as successful because you're really opening up your doors to what could potentially be some, liability issues. And we can get into that. There's some misconceptions with that I learned right away that were categorically false, but you have to trust who you are getting in business with.
So can you speak a little deeper on how did you go about building that trust? And then how do you collaborate with these organizations to cultivate a talent pipeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we were really fortunate, I would say about every couple of months, I'll get another organization that'll, knock on my door and say, hey, we're with this organization. We employ people with disabilities. And after about the third person, I said, hey, stop right there. I'm on board. Let's start building some respect and some rapport with each other. So one of the things that I found it was hard was the communication side of things. You can't, because of ADA, you can't come out and ask, hey, what disability does this person have? What is this? So we kind of developed our own little internal lingo of, hey, does this person need a job coach? How intensive do we have to have someone working with them? So there are ways of asking tough questions without breaking any laws. And really that's where an organization comes in, and they really help guide you through a lot of these kind of misconceptions and kind of tough, because it's as much as we love to talk about how great it is a difficult and an uncomfortable situation. And that's why you have to build trust.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about maybe your first hire, like what did that process look like from the interview to the onboard to the culture impact?
Well, it was, I have a really funny example of that. So what we did was we actually, we approached it just like anything else, like any other interview. But it was a little more fluid, kind of like Tom said. And it was funny because MCFI, what they did was they coached the individuals on how to go through that hiring process. So not only did they coach the people with disabilities, but they also coached kind of myself on kind of how this works. And I love giving the example, I said, well, is there any questions? And the one girl asked me like, what are your greatest fears? What are your weaknesses? And then the job coach is like, no, they ask you that. So it kind of adds some levity to it all. But once again, we had the organizations by our side in the beginning 100% of the way. So it made it extremely, extremely easy.
So how did as far as the culture and the fellow employees, how did they embrace it?
Yeah, so I would say that's probably the biggest misconception that a lot of people, I think, if there's any key point, I think that's another one. Because when you have a workforce that have maybe learned conflict resolution in different ways, maybe have a different upbringing, it can be kind of difficult. And you're just hoping that you have this nurturing environment. But what I found was when we brought someone in with disabilities, these guys, these tough bakers, I call them, with these hard exteriors and abrasive approaches, wow, did that go away in a heartbeat? I quickly found that it fostered more of a nurturing environment. And at the end, we'll show some pictures kind of, I've had employees take it upon themselves to start showing someone with disabilities another job, another task. And it kind of like took them under their wing, and it made my employees and my culture much more responsive to change and training. And that was probably that was an amazing thing for me to see. And most of all, I have mentors, my business partner, my brother. For them to see that, I think was really, really what made us really buy in.
It's a real insightful point that the increase in empathy helped be a better catalyst for change.
Exactly.
Could you speak a little bit to some of the nature of these disabilities and the roles they were doing? And then did you notice a difference in their output versus people without disabilities?
Yeah, big time. So we do a lot of we focus on a lot of long-term care. So here at Greeby's, we're famous for our crawlers. So almost every single one of our mini crawler bags is bagged by someone with a disability, and it's all over the board, from Down syndrome to autism to hearing impaired, vision impaired. And then we also have, through the TWE system, which I think is probably one of the most amazing things to happen with people with disabilities, is just giving them the opportunity. So we have some other people where, in the beginning, the job coaching was really intensive, but the whole idea and the whole goal is to make someone independent. And that happened much quicker than we thought. And how you do that, and something that we're working on, is you have to be realistic in the workplace with benchmarks. Just like your employees, if their utility and their efficiency is not up to your standards, you have to communicate that, because you are not helping anyone by holding them on in a job that is not a right fit for them.
Mhm. So you talked, switching gears a little bit about systems.
Yeah.
How have you kind of integrated these partners in this talent pipeline that they provide with your HR infrastructure?
Yeah.
You let
So
them own it, and then kind of what does that organizational involvement and structure look like?
Yeah, so the structure is, I usually get the ball rolling. I'll start the relationship. There really has to be one person that really spearheads this. And then the buy-in process really doesn't take too long. Once your employees can see results, especially from an HR standpoint, because usually your HR managers are the first ones to tell you, hey, you're opening up a can of worms. This is dangerous. If you make accommodations for one, you got to make them for all, which is completely false. So just getting people to buy into that process. So I'm lucky. I have an amazing staff here who really, really wanted to see this work. And that actually made me hire more people who bought into this. So, when we hire people, we tell people flat out, hey, this is a part of our culture. This is what we do here. And that is a huge selling point from a labor standpoint. But I also can't stress enough the use of job coaches. One of these really wonderful things I've found is work-life balance. And it's made me kind of look at work-life balance from a different light. Being a millennial, us millennials, we're known for, we have demands in the workplace. We want flexibility. We want all these things. I know, what an awful generation to want, a nice flexible work schedule. But what working with disabilities has helped me is you can make work-life balance, be your strength. And I don't think it's any longer, it's not up to the employee to strike that balance. I really think it's up to the organization to foster an environment for work-life balance. To give an example of that, for one of our girls, that's, the girls with any disabilities, if they're sick, if there's a death in the family, if something happens, we are so flexible with them because we know what their output is. We know they're going to show up again. We know they're going to be on time. So we almost have this way of looking at it like, well, they're really good workers. So yeah, of course, we're going to have some balance with them. And then now I'm thinking like, well, why don't we have job coaches in every business, regardless of disabilities? Why don't we have someone in the workforce that not only helps you balance your workload, but actually what you do outside of work? Because that really affects a lot of things inside the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really great point. Um, did you consult with legal counsel as you went through this? Did you have to change any of your HR policies? Um,
No,
just
actually I
for those
didn't.
preconceptions, that
Yeah, well, and that's why the building the trust is really important because like we we sat in our war room and said, all right, we got to think of everything that could go wrong. And I'm telling you guys, if that's your approach to this, it's not going to work. If you try to look at everything that can go wrong with anything in life, it's a terrible, terrible outlook. So what we did was, I got a list of questions and I went to MCFI and said, hey, help me through some of these. And it's almost like they started kind of giggling like, Colton, you're going to learn, we're going to go through some of these things, like the ADA thing. A lot of business owners are extremely careful with ADA. And as I was, basically what I learned through MCFI and Goodwill was that, hey, Colton, we're not going to give you someone that's not a right fit in your organization. We're going to try to match someone that really works and thrives well. We wouldn't be doing anyone a favor if we're going to put someone with a wheelchair in your facility if there's not great access, to that. So that was a huge point for them.
Yep. How would you compare the being on time and more specifically the output and the retention versus the rest of the team, individuals with disabilities versus without?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget, it was, we were working on the line and it was about 2 weeks into the process. And, I almost feel a little guilty and a little weird for saying this, but, I've talked to the job coach and I'm looking at her like, I can't believe the results we're getting. I mean, staying on task, staying on time. I said, I can't get any of my workers to do any of these things, to follow rules. I mean, the food safety rules. I mean, the people with disabilities, if you give them the system, if you give them the structure, they will follow it. Other workers, not so much. So, I'm talking to the job coach about this and she goes, Colton, look at that individual right there. You're going to have that individual for at least 20 years. And I looked at her and I said, wow, if I could plan on having a worker with me for 20 years, you know how much I'm going to invest in that worker? You know how much time I'm going to put into that? I'm going to put all my resources in that because from a business sense, it just makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of business owners I've talked to that embrace this. They not only follow, but they enjoy the work. If you really truly align skills and abilities up, they live for it and they take pride in what they do.
It's their structure. We had someone unfortunately lose their caregiver halfway through, and so they were working, their caregiver passed away, and she showed up to work the next day and the day after, and we're all like amazed, like, wow, you need time. And basically through the job coach, we found out that no, she showed up to work because that structure is the thing that keeps her going, and then like talk about a tearjerker. It's like, wow, this person just really needs that structure. And it made me feel, yeah, this is important what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. So a couple more minutes and then I'll transition to some photos. We can walk through some of those.
Yeah.
Going through this process, what are things you learned that you would give advice to business owners that are looking to make their first hire?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Because it is, emotion and logic, it's tough when you're playing with both. But really, from a business standpoint, you have to, if emotion gets you in the door, logic is what has to keep this program going. It can't just be on emotion alone. So don't be afraid to set benchmarks and have that conversation. I want to give out a shout out to someone from Goodwill named Keith. I talked to Keith. Keith, approached me, and this is kind of how it goes. Hey, Colton, I have a TWE. This person is looking for some sanitation duties. He likes to clean, or, I have an office staff. And I just flat out said, hey, right now, I can't guarantee I can hire this individual. We are on a hiring freeze, But if this person wants an opportunity, we're more than happy. This is what we're looking for. And then Keith says, great, I'll get back to the consumer and I'll let you know. So it's a really simple process.
What would you do differently? Looking back?
What I would do differently is, I'm kind of being a hypocrite, but I would, one thing that I think to really see this through is to really, really focus on the benchmarks. That's something that I know I have some more work to do, in this beginning process, is really create those benchmarks. And I think a really good point for everyone to understand is I went through a really tough situation where I had to let an individual go. I had to let two individuals go. And that was extremely, extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to let anyone go, but especially with someone with a disability. But that's where, I was talked to about this. They kind of helped me through the process. They were in the room with me, the job coach was, and they helped me kind of foster that environment. But, you have to look at it as, if this person doesn't have the soft skills, they can't enhance themselves. So you are holding them back. So that's important to understand.
Great. So I'll kick it over and maybe walk through some of these slides and you can speak to them a little bit. And then
Yeah.
we've got about 5 minutes before we transition over to Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. So this is, these are a picture of the girls. It brings a smile to my face every day. So what you're seeing there is, they're making punchkis. So Fat Tuesday, we make 90,000 fresh punchkis, on Fat Tuesdays. And our girls were a key component of that. And a lot of our proceeds went directly to them for more job coaching, transportation, things like that. You could see one of our workers in the background there. He was one of the people that took it upon himself to really show these girls the way. And, we all have built a familial relationship with them. So if we go through a couple more pictures here, this individual is Ebony, and everyone has their strength in the assembly line. And hers was just putting the pan just directly on a rack. If I want to go to the next picture. And then, and this was, this on the picture here on the left, this was Alyssa. And, when you have an employee that says, gosh, all I want to do is just put white icing on a punchki, it's like, hey, here we go. Let's make this happen. And then all of a sudden, I had to tell my workers, guys, you have to let them work, because once you see this kind of environment, everyone wants to jump on board. So I had to tell my workers, like, all right, one at a time. We all can't be in this process. Let's just one at a time here. And we have a little clip here that I'd like to show as well, if we have time, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. You show that clip and then transition over to Jeff.
Okay.
Can't hear the volume though.
I think you have it muted.
I'm sure Brian's working on it. This is our first webinar, so it's been going too smooth so far.
Yeah, something had to go wrong, right? Well, I'll just kind of give a brief description of kind of what we were doing here. So this was just, one of the things that we were trying to do is, create opportunities for everyone here at the bakery. MCFI was a huge bastion for us in helping us promote what we're doing here as a bakery. So this was, we were announcing kind of our partnership with MCFI for Fat Tuesday. So 100% of proceeds they created a donut, they created the filling. They got to have all the input in it. And then anything that was sold went directly back to them for, just for more help in the workplace, whether that's for transportation, for funding. This is Andrea explaining, what her favorite donuts are, her favorite crawlers. We come out with a new flavor She particularly likes putting the stickers on the bags. There's a clip here you'll see of Alyssa where she puts it in, she gives the thumbs up, she's sliding the bags across, and it's just, everyone's got a smile on their face. And it's, yeah, to understand that this is a business opportunity and not just strictly an emotional one, is kind of foreign for some people. But yeah, and that's Heidi. Heidi, I can't speak highly enough of Heidi. She is, I know I'm just some little partner in the whole MCFI umbrella, but sometimes she makes me feel like I'm their biggest customer, because she's there for me with Greebies every step of the way. So we're extremely fortunate for that partnership.
Awesome. Well, that's we're right on time. A really good discussion, Colton. I greatly appreciate it. Now we'll transition to our final speaker and then open up for Q&A. Jeff Curlin, President and CEO of Tailored Label Products.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm inspired by Colton and Tom. I want to visit their facilities. I think you could learn a lot from these guys. I do have some slides. You want me just to go through those quickly and then do some questions, Derek, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, the floor is yours. I'd say walk through the slides, tell your
Sure.
story, and I can jump in if I think there's something we want to dig a little deeper into.
Perfect. So next. So just a little bit about TLP. We are a manufacturer of labels and die-cut adhesives. We've been around since 1984. We've got a little over 120 employees, and we have manufacturing plants in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, and Atlanta, Georgia, and then we have distribution in Mexico, and then some sales plants throughout. Most of our employees and most of the largest content of manufacturing is in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. Next. Just real quick, this was taken a few years ago just at our Menominee Falls plant. And, I was thinking back, we're inclusive by nature. And I think it's really important for our employees. We are doing inner city Milwaukee school kid tours. We are hiring folks from all walks of life. And kind of like what Tom and Colton said, we look much more into character and is the person a cultural fit. And then what abilities can we use and apply for them to be successful than almost anything else. I mean, we have certain roles like an accountant or a press operator that, yeah, they have to have had years of experience and maybe a certification. But other than that, we train almost everybody on the job at TLP. Next, Brian. Just a little view. We are a manufacturing plant. There are many opportunities for someone to get hurt. You can cut yourself, pinch yourself. We have lift trucks flying around. We do our best to be safe, but the point is it could be a dangerous situation. And knock on wood, of all our disabled employees, I don't believe any of them have yet to be hurt. We've had plenty of our other employees get hurt, minor things, but thus far so good.
Hey, Jeff, was there any different approach you took in managing that risk, different than what you did before you employed individuals with disabilities?
Yeah, and especially early on when we didn't know, when we hired our first person, we're like, do we wrap them in a bubble to keep them safe? You become more and more confident, and kind of what I think Colton said, once you show them what to do and how to be safe, and they follow it. They just follow it to a T. That's been our experience, where we've had other employees hurt themselves and you ask them what they're doing and, well, I was doing this. Well, why were you doing that? You're not supposed to do that. We do right now, we're moving an employee over to cross train on another piece of equipment who has Down syndrome. And we are looking at maybe a little of additional guarding just to make it extra safe. There already is some guarding, but we can put some plexiglass shield, we think pretty simply in place, and they'll be able to operate that machine that runs several hours a day. So yeah, we do.
So really no change to your policies?
Nope.
Was it in collaboration with a job coach at all? That first hire?
Well, the first hire was not, that we have had other people come through Easter seals and whatnot and kind of look at our situation, and we would detail our needs. This is what we're looking for, and is there a good fit, and how do we make sure it's safe? But there really hasn't been much consideration at all that we've had to do anything extra.
Great, thank you.
Again, this is just a picture of our floor, different manufacturing, from things that are automated that are moving by themselves without an operator even being there, to fully automated machines with operators running them. So this is how it started for us. 15 years ago, our founder was on a kind of a building mission trip, and he met Patrick. And Patrick was 16 years old at the time, and our founder just fell in love with him. And if you meet Patrick, you'll fall in love with him. Just a wonderful young man. And his dad, Brian, said, he's really wanted to get him into a good workplace, but was struggling to find any place. So we talked about it as a leadership team, and we said, yeah, let's try this. We had a little bit of fear and trepidation, but we really wanted to make it work. And in the beginning, Patrick was just doing, real simple things, but then he's our #1 box maker. He's made over 1 million boxes. He did that several years ago, and we presented him with a golden box. But he's doing other things, and he's the individual we're going to train on that machine here shortly. And then Patrick's just a rock star, especially in the disabled world. And he has invited the governor, he's invited senators to come and visit us. And, of course, we welcome that with open arms. But it's been huge for the employees, not only everyone sees Patrick as their little brother and everybody's rooting for them, but also just the cool publicity we have gotten for having him around. Next. This real quick, we were awarded the Tesla business back in 2017, and we had a party and we celebrated with food like we always do. And what's cool is we brought an S-Class Tesla into the plant, and the employees were like, let's put Patrick in the passenger seat. So that's him there waving, and it was part of the celebration. And we sent this photo to Tesla, and I'm told that it got to Elon, and he was impressed. He didn't send us a car or a card for that matter, but they got a big kick out of it. And I guess exemplifies our culture that our employees were just so proud of Patrick and just wanted him in the middle of this. Next. So I think the biggest thing for us is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, we'd had Patrick here for about 5 years. We just started reaching out and partnering with other organizations like Goodwill, Zacharias Acres, Beyond Vision, Easter Seals, and taking our HR folks, taking our operation folks, and touring their facilities, seeing how they're handling folks with disabilities, getting advice from them, getting more comfortable with the whole idea of having folks with disabilities in the workplace, and then having these folks come and visit our plant. We've had the president of Zacharias Acres come and do a presentation, and everybody was in tears hearing about this. And it's really opened our eyes to the need, which I'll talk about on the next slide, but also just how viable it is and how an untapped solution it is out there that most companies aren't taking advantage of at all.
Jeff, how would you recommend a business that hasn't made that first hire in taking those initial steps to develop partnerships?
I would email Colton, Tom, or myself, and we'll welcome anybody with open arms to come visit our plants. I want to visit their plants and see what they're doing differently as well. But partnering with other organizations, have them come and or we'd gladly visit your plant and walk around and go, here's what we're thinking. You could easily use people here, here, and here, and have that confidence. And then when you bring the person in, a job coach is great, but sometimes it's just a referral that you get from somebody. And you may not have that available, but then have some other experts. There's plenty of willing organizations and willing people that would be willing to help out someone starting that journey.
Also welcome to reach out to Judy, our executive director, myself.
Absolutely. So this is just an example. We'll send folks to Goodwill. We send folks to Zacharias Acres just to help out. We'll help out monetarily. We'll help out making signage or what have you. But our employees really love it when they get to go and just spend the day. They're punched in and they just get to work and help out and be alongside folks with special needs and realize these are just lovely, fun people, just like me. They just look a little different or act a little different.
Could you speak to the kind of question I had for Colton relative to output, retention, being on time, et cetera, some of those metrics?
We don't have metrics, but I can tell you with complete confidence, our biggest issues for our supervisors with our disabled folks every morning is to make sure there's enough work for them teed up. And make sure it's like a day and a half's worth of work because they just focus. There's no chit-chatting, there's no texting, they just get it done with a smile all day long, and they will get our experience has been they'll be very frustrated if they run out of work. They get rattled. They know they're there to work. They take their work ethic very seriously. And that's been the biggest consideration. So I wish I had that consideration with all our employees. We have great employees, but not everybody is so focused on working and being productive.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So in some of the things, part of the whole cultural aspect of this, and just like implementing lean into a manufacturing organization, if you don't get people to buy into it, to understand why should we even be looking at this? What are the benefits to us? I think you're wasting your time. And some of the things we learned by partnering with these other organizations is just the sheer magnitude of folks that are out there with disabilities. 12.6% of the US. Well, 12.6% of the US is what, 41 million people with disabilities. And if only 1 in 5 are employed, that's like 33 million people that with disabilities that don't have jobs, which is sad and heartbreaking, but it's also this huge opportunity when we're all looking for great employees that are, like Colton said, are going to stick around. They're just going to be with you forever in most cases. And then in Wisconsin alone, with the 850,000 public school students, from 11 to 14%, that is a staggering number of folks that have some sort of, IEP that whether it's physical or cognitive, that they've got some special plan that are going to need to enter or want to enter the workforce here shortly. So there's a lot more folks coming. And then, just a few years ago, there was a lot of workshops where you'd have a bunch of folks with maybe Down syndrome and they're assembling things, and that has been kind of frowned on, and there's been defunding. And so a lot of those folks now that had employment don't have employment and need folks like us to integrate them into the regular workforce. The other guys have said this, culture is everything for us. I've been doing this a long time. We've all hired that person that interviewed amazingly well, their resume looks amazing, and they come in and they're not a cultural fit. They can't get along with anybody. They're arrogant, what have you. Culture is everything. So interviewing folks, are they nice people? And then, like all our employees, we cross-train everybody. We move people around all the time. It's just part of what we do. We find out what they're good at. We give them opportunities at anything they're interested in. And sometimes they're like, and I really don't like doing this, just like Colton said. And we'll keep moving around. If they've got a great attitude, you'll work forever with somebody like that. And then flexible. This is the age of flexibility. We have a ton of single moms who are trying to raise 3 kids on their own and trying to work, and they need to be flexible with them. And when they're great workers and they have a great attitude, we're going to do that. And same thing goes for our folks with disabilities. So you have to be a little bit flexible with them. Their attitude is great. Their productivity is great. Why not? It's a win-win. And our cultural value, and our top 3 core values are customer focus, whether that's external or internal. For your internal customers, integrity, are you going to do what you say you're going to do? And then, are you a team player? We want rock stars, but not at the expense of a team functioning well. I learned that a long time ago. It's not worth it. And then, real quick, I don't want to preach to anybody, but we all have abilities and disabilities. We all have issues. We all have insecurities. And when people are good, you deal with them, but we have a lot of people that struggle to get to work on time, or they're texting or gossip or arrogant. And I can tell you of the folks that we have with disabilities, I can't speak for the whole population, we've yet to have any one of these issues with those folks. They never show up entitled. They never show up even grumpy. They show up happy and just thrilled to have a job and just want to work and make you happy. And if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what else will. And then next slide is just a converse to this. What we have found with our folks with disabilities, super strong work ethic, kind, high attention to detail. We have very, very picky customers, and most of our work has to be final inspected, almost everything. And it's a small population of the entire population that we will allow inspect our product. And we have a couple folks, one in particular that has a cognitive disability, but an amazing attention to detail. Will catch anything. If anything's done, we have to talk them back going, no, that's actually okay. That tiny little speck will be fine. But most people, and men especially, just don't have a great attention to detail. And then grateful, joyful, motivated, selfless, humble. Those are characteristics that we should all strive to have. The one thing of advice when you get someone in, we found it best for them to have one sole point of contact, whether it's a supervisor or they have a buddy, somebody that can work with them day in and day out, that can be there for any questions, especially early on, coach them, mentor them, and just being friendly, compassionate, and patient are really the three attributes that they need to have. And it usually goes really well.
Great. So right on time, do you have any final comments, Jeff, before we transition to open Q&A?
No, I would just collaboration with other companies that are doing this or the various organizations that we've talked about and experts in this area. It takes away the intimidation factor greatly.
Awesome. Great stuff. So now it's time for open Q&A. For those that are on the call, feel free to submit any questions through the Q&A icon and keep the discussion going. So I'll I'll throw it out there, first question, and it's just maybe a deeper dialogue on what do these, like, how do you continue to cultivate a good pipeline of talent? And what does that look like in partnership with the Goodwills, the MCFIs, the Easter Seals?
I'll jump, I guess. Yeah, from a partnership standpoint, I guess we're really open with both MCFI and city partners and things on what jobs we have coming up, what things we may be looking for, what things we might need help with. So we kind of have a constant open conversation about what we're looking for. So when they come across someone that may be a good fit, or they have someone great that they don't know where else to go with, like, we'd love to meet that person as a possible candidate. So we're kind of always open to meeting someone that's there, but always having an open conversation about what we might be looking for coming up.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Have you guys developed a formal structure around a cadence of a dialogue or an integration within the HR group? Is there somebody that, I mean, HR owns the talent base, but any additional comments?
Yeah, for us, folks like Easter Seals have had tons of employees for us, but we've received folks just via word of mouth. I think Colt said the same thing, that you just kind of get a reputation for doing this and being open to do this. And we're honest with them, just like hiring anybody. Like, we are open to interviewing them, and then we're open to giving them a shot, but they have to be a great employee, just like anybody else. Just like when someone wants to bring their brother on board, like, okay, just beware. If they don't work out, they don't work out.
Yeah.
Have that honest, open dialogue.
So mental health, especially in nowadays, given the unique circumstances we're in, have you, is there a specific approach? Have any of you hired someone with mental health challenges, and what did that look like?
Yeah,
We've had a few different people with mental health challenges. I think the being understanding is the biggest piece of that. And then we've, to, kind of tee off what Jeff said too, we have like a single point of contact for them, so that, if they're having a bad day or if something does happen, they know who they can go to, and everyone else knows, like, if a specific person is having an issue, and in our office, Christy's our kind of office manager who handles a lot of that stuff. And so if there's an issue, she kind of takes point on any of those interactions when someone may be having a bad day or an issue. So having them have that single point of contact and someone who's comfortable in having tough conversations or being there when things aren't going well is key.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important, Tom. The single point of contact is huge. We had an individual with Tourette syndrome, and it was very difficult for some of our other employees to actively listen when an outburst would happen. But with the single point of contact, when that person understands how to redirect, it makes it a lot easier, and say, hey, we're going to redirect. We're going to go into this area of the bakery. Let's talk this through, and it just makes it more seamless.
Mm-hmm. Great. Here's another question. Has anyone hired youth apprenticeship students? If so, is there any advice you could share on the challenges you may have faced? So I'm going to say that's probably a no.
Speak to that again. What was it?
Frankly, I'm just reading it off of what I have.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is probably through like a project search program or something like that.
Okay.
So I'd say younger individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, that's where, and maybe it's not the same, Derek. Do you think they're touching on maybe what TWE could be?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Okay.
The
So
follow-up I just received.
a temporary work experience. I think, once you build that relationship with an organization, I would recommend everyone start there first, because, so everyone understands what TWE is. It's a 90-day trial period where the state funds it. And then after the end of that, if you want to hire that person on and they work out, then you do. So it's kind of like a no risk way to kind of start getting into the water of testing out what, Jeff, Tom, and I are all talking about.
Great. Thanks for helping me out there. Anybody have anything else to add to that question?
I guess we've done a bunch of TWEs as well, and from an ease of a program to get involved with, and both there's like external coaching help and other things that can be involved with it. It's a great way to start getting involved.
Yeah.
And it's just we haven't hired every single person we've ever had for a TWE, but you do end up with a lot of long-term employees because of it. And otherwise it's amazing for people that end up not being a fit or getting another opportunity that may be more along the lines of what their goals are. It's still, they have like great appreciation for the stepping stone and have learned something. And it's overall just a wonderful program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
We've done one, and I highly recommend it. It's just like a temp to hire position where there's no, you hire a temp with somebody maybe that doesn't have all the exact experience, but you think their character is great, and you bring them on and train them and see how they work out, and then hopefully they move into a full hire position. So,
and even with that, I kind of adopted the TWE philosophy with the rest of my staff. So, the other day we were looking at hiring a supervisor, and it was a really big jump. And basically I approached it from a TWE standpoint, said, hey, how about you work for me for 2 months? At the end of the 2 months, let's check in with each other. Let's see how it worked out. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt to kind of learn as you go. I'm going to, kind of, here's your boundary, stay within that, and let's have a discussion. And without TWE, I would have never put that into practice.
Awesome. So for someone that maybe not be a leader in their organization and at the top of the house, what advice would you have for maybe someone that heads up a business line that wants to generate buy-in across departments or with the leadership? How would you help them sell this to leadership in other departments?
I would get them in front of another leader, get their leader in front of another leader who's already drunk on this Kool-Aid, if you will, and just say, hey, can we go tour Colton or Tom's plant or what have you, and meet and see the why and see the passion, not only in the other leaders' eyes, but in the whole staff's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
If the leader
I
doesn't
think
buy
also
in,
reaching out to like MCFI or having like Heidi or someone come in and talk to people. They have, anyone who's had experience, and I'm both city partners and MCFI for us we've introduced them to other companies, and they've gone and met with them directly, and they've then led to great experiences.
Yeah, I think that was a big part at Old National. What changed our culture. We did a mentorship program called Achievability, where we just take executive leadership and pair them up with an individual with a disability. And it just kind of created that empathy and that shift in culture that this is something we should be doing. So that peer-to-peer, like seeing they're an individual with skills and abilities, and then to drive outcomes, that peer-to-peer dialogue with business leaders, just to help change that perception. Let me see. I think I've got another question here. So here's another one. And this is a good one. As you all have mentioned, having structure is so important for these individuals. How have you adjusted to the lack of structure and uncertainty found within the current landscape? So how are you dealing with COVID?
COVID. Yeah, COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Took a nice little break from it.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about this whole COVID thing. No, it was tough because, elephant in the room, some of these people were the most susceptible to the virus. Unfortunately, all of our people with disabilities were laid off, as 50% of our staff was laid off. So that was kind of in the whole bucket. So we did have to have a different approach, but throughout that whole process, I kept in contact with organizations saying, hey, sales are going to start picking up. I think we can come back here, and the job coaches kind of helped us out with, all right, this person feels more comfortable with the mask. This person's caregiver wants them to do this. And it actually helped. It gave an opportunity to retrain some of our food safety laws. So we really focused on the training when they came back.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments?
Yeah, I guess to piggyback on that, we had some short-term layoffs for people, and in bringing people back, we tried to do some more separation of workspaces and different things to try to give people more room. I would overall, like, it wasn't for us, it wasn't a major piece. Just kind of made us reevaluate some of our spacing and layouts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to this, it didn't have a big impact on us. A few folks that we have with disabilities are in a cell. We have plexiglass now around them, like everybody else. So, and they're already fully trained. So if we're bringing somebody new in right now, that would be different. And we're not at the moment. We're not hiring anybody at the moment. So.
Well, and I want to add one more piece to this, was that just to show how important, our workers are with disabilities to our organization. When I say we had to lay off 50% of our staff, the first individuals that came back were the ones with disabilities, because I knew from a structure standpoint, they were going to follow that structure and that new set of updated, CDC guidelines and things like that. So I don't want to make it seem like we laid them off because they weren't critical. No, we brought them back as soon as possible for that reason, to bring structure back into the workplace.
Yeah, that's a great point. Another good question. We have discussed job coaches. So was this job coaching assigned to a coworker, or was the job coach from an outside source, or a combination of the two?
For us, it was a combination of the two. So like we had a job coach from Easter Seals, and then an internal person who already experienced and desire. Not all of our employers, are pretty empathetic and like our philosophy, but some are a little intimidated. So we have a few folks that are like, yeah, I absolutely want to do this and be their coach and be their buddy. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, job coaching is really important. And, when I first got this program off the ground, when we got this program off the ground, I started thinking upstream right away. So what I'm trying to do now is hopefully get in touch with some state legislators, start maybe getting some funding. I know there's some funding out there currently for job coaching, but we have had this approach where now we are starting to look at hiring our own job coaches, because we've seen the success from job coaches from the outside. And really, we've had great job coaches, and we've had some not so good job coaches. That was something else that we talked to the organization about. Hey, this guy wasn't a good fit. This person was, and they immediately took care of that situation.
Awesome. Any comments from you, Tom?
Yeah, I guess job coaching standpoint, we've used the external our partnerships externally have provided us, I would say, 90% of them have been great job coaches, and it's been wonderful. On the internal side, our main point of contact is our biggest job coach from that standpoint. But yeah, we don't have designated job coaching, but it's something that as we grow would probably make sense. But the external ones that are MCFI and things have helped us with have been great.
Great. Well, I'm gonna wrap up with some closing comments. Make sure we get everybody back to their day by 9 o'clock. I think first, please consider joining Disability In. We're the only business-to-business association. We're sharing best practices, resources, education. And for those organizations with employees less than 500, it's only a $500 investment, and I think generates a great return. So highlighting some of the major things that I've heard throughout this discussion, it really starts with your culture, the character of the talent, regardless of the ability or disability, their skills and abilities and align it with the job. I think having a coach or a single point of contact is huge. Business leaders should connect with other leaders to develop best practices and learn from each other, which is something we can help facilitate. And external partnerships, developing those partnerships that know your business, know the needs, convey exactly what you're looking for, have high expectations, and I think you'll be surprised on what happens. And ultimately, this should just be part of your talent, attention, and attraction strategy. If you do it the right way, like any hire, if you align the skills and abilities up with the job, they are going to be focused, embrace it, and take pride in what they do. So I want to thank our our content partners again, Goodwill Industries of Southeast Wisconsin, Milwaukee Center for Independence, our speakers, Tom, Colton, and Jeff. And in closing, I think you're missing out if you're not open to considering the employment of individuals with disabilities. And there's a lot of individuals on the sidelines with skills and resources that just want an opportunity. And there's plenty of partners to help you navigate the process. So with that, everybody enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Please reach out if you have questions.